Welcome back, everybody. This is the Resistance broadcast. I'm John. How are you? Thanks so much for joining us today. It is Monday. That means it's our news show. While there is a lot of Star Wars news that might be coming out this month, there isn't a ton, but we do have some cool stuff we are going to get into, including this whole Project Luminous thing. We're going to put on our tinfoil hats, and I said it right finally. How about that?
Tinsfoils.
Tinsfoils, yeah. All right, it's going to be a good day. Feeling good. We're going to speculate a little bit about that and get into a bunch of other stuff. With me, as always, James and Lacey. So, guys, Bob Iger, we know he's going to be doing that Bob Iger Con call, I believe, tomorrow. But I wanted to bring something up to you guys because I remember I have my big regret moment from the premiere of The Rise of Skywalker where I froze and he walked by me and I should have said something. And Matt Martin's like, yeah, you should have said something. And that made me feel even worse. And all our patrons dogged on me about it. And you guys continue to do so, but that's fine. But I saw a video with him and like one of the princes, like Prince Henry, Harry, Todd, whatever their names are, one of them. And I guess he was talking to Bob Iger, like selling his wife as a voice actress. Like, oh, she's really good at this. And Bob Iger's eyes couldn't have been rolling further back into his head. So if he did that to a royal like family member, I almost feel better that I didn't say anything to him about Make Solo 2 happen. I feel like I saved it.
I actually don't think he would have done that to you because
No?
that's more of like you're appreciating his product. You're not asking him for anything. Like it's different when people come up to you and you're like, oh, you're in this? You'd love this. That's different than you saying, hey, I really like this thing you made that you invested in.
Yeah, I guess you're right.
I don't know though, because I'm
also,
really
we
proud
haven't brought
of
this up since you said that you didn't want to bring it up anymore. So I just wanted to throw that out there that you're bringing it up now.
Well, it made me feel better seeing him do that to a royal family member.
Also too, like I'm Bob Iger's a great guy, I'm sure, but I could also see in some scenario where he's like, and I'm proud of everything we've done with Make Solo 2 happen, but I'm sure he's like, that's cool, you started that. Talk to me when you've started 8 Fortune 500 companies,
Right,
you know what I mean, or whatever.
When you're running a multi-billion
you want me to be impressed? Cool.
When your pay cut is $49 million and it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's also, I guess, how I would have if I approached it and been like, you better make Solo 2 happen, man. Or like, hey, Bob, can you look at my tie? Take a photo. But yeah, I guess. But either way, that made me feel better. So I just want to get that off my chest. I have less regrets about what happened. But one day we will meet Bob. And it'll probably be after he's not with Disney anymore and it won't matter. But anyway, make Solo 2 happen, everybody. All right, guys. So you ready to talk about Star Wars? Fresh off the Super Bowl weekend. Big game. Huge game last night. Insane Super Bowl last night. Did you guys do anything for the Super Bowl?
Well, there was the commercial. I saw that one. I saw the other commercial. Actually, this is true. I've seen a lot of the commercials because they air them now before the Super Bowl, which makes no sense to me and gives me no incentive to watch the show, right? You want ratings, right?
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense.
You pay $5 million to get a specific spot, and then you post it on Twitter before, like a week before. Like, what are we doing?
Yeah,
I don't know.
You usually don't do anything for the Super Bowl, right? Am I right on that, James?
If anything, we go to a friend's house.
Oh, okay,
just
that's right. Yeah,
to hang out with them.
We did. Didn't we have to rush back or something after the Super Bowl and record some kind of reactions to the Solo trailer 2 years ago?
That sounds right. Yeah.
Yeah. Lacey, what are you doing? You're going to a party, right? Or you went to a party. What am I saying?
I was going to say, what are you talking about?
Kayfabe. Breaking that kayfabe.
Yeah, I went to hang out with family, I guess. It was nice to watch a game where it was two teams that nobody really was rooting for.
Yeah.
Surprise ending, too,
Huge twist ending.
Yeah.
M. Night Shyamalan came out and you just never saw it coming.
He tripped on the squirrel and he didn't catch the ball. Hot Tub Time Machine reference there.
Yeah, the Niners used to be like this huge juggernaut, and like people used to like get on the bandwagon in the 80s and 90s, but then they became bad and people were like, they refused to be front runners, so they stuck around as Niner fans, and now they could be Niners fans again. But anyway, this is a Star Wars podcast though, so we're just testing other things out. James, we have the Resistance report, so why don't we fire that up and get into the hot stove of Star Wars news.
It's the Resistance.
So, anybody have any interest in Project Luminous? Probably
What's
the Black
that?
Series Rebels. Stay luminous, right? Nobody knows what that is, John. That's the thing. Nobody knows. But we did get a little bit of a information drop from our good friend Clayton Sandell from ABC News.
Good guy.
I don't know who he knows, but they sent him an image of the logo for Project Luminous, and they said, "Yeah, go ahead and tweet that sucker." And
be the first one.
Yeah. So
Did you notice the watermark on it, by the way?
What?
Do you notice the watermark on the image he tweeted?
I saw
No,
it in
is
the
there a
lower
watermark?
right in white, but I didn't know what it
It
was.
says confidential Lucasfilm.
Does it? Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Yay.
But he tweeted that out, and we got some information saying that they're going to hold a press conference for Project Luminous in February on the 24th. And also there was a little bit of a side thing too, that we're coming up with the Bob Iger holding his Disney earnings call on February 4th, which actually is, if I'm not mistaken, tomorrow, right? As of listening
Yes.
to this episode. So
Yes.
pay attention to that. John, I'm going to start with you on this one. Can you kind of sum up these stories and tell us maybe a little bit about what we heard last year on the conference call?
Yeah. So, I mean, Project Luminous, it looks like everything points to publishing, which they call Disney Lucasfilm Press now, officially, because the project says the editor is Michael Siglain, and we all know he's the guy who's been kind of the editor running the deal for all these books and comics for years now. Lacey and I might or may not have seen him at brunch at New York Comic Con at one point. But and then you list all these authors: Claudia Gray, Charles Soule, Cavan Scott, Daniel Jose Older, Justina Ireland. And it's supposed to interconnect comics and books. So you're thinking like, all right, well, Charles Soule's going to handle the comics, and then Claudia Gray's going to write a novel, and that it's all probably pointing to that. My question is though, if it's an event that's being held to unveil this, it's got to be bigger than that. So I don't want to speculate too much out of the gate here, because I want to hear you guys' thoughts about it. But to me, it's clear as day. It's going to be bigger than just here's your next literature stuff. But the Iger call, I know people are always thinking there are going to be some big reveals on that. But we look back, Val had pointed out, Val's like the head guy at Star Wars Newsnet, for anyone who doesn't know, that last year we reported on the earnings call, and all that Bob Iger revealed then was that they're still going to be doing licensing for the video games, and that they're not going to be making them in-house, and that they're going to be bringing in other companies to do that sort of thing. And that's all he talked about for Star Wars in 2019, when you had The Mandalorian coming, you had Resistance coming, Season 2, you had Episode 9 coming, you had Celebration, and that's all he said on Q1 earnings call. So I don't expect much coming from Bob Iger tomorrow, especially he doesn't want to overshadow this new thing coming in 2 weeks or 3 weeks for Project Luminous. So if he says anything about Star Wars tomorrow, I think it'll be very light, very minimal. It's my guess. And he may just say, look out for February 24th. We're so excited about Project Luminous to kick off Star Wars. So just look out for that. And that's it for Star Wars for now. So I think that's where we're going to be at with Bob tomorrow. I hope I'm wrong as always. I love hearing more juiciness with the Star Wars news and that sort of thing. It's coming out of official sources, but that's where I'm at right now.
It's kind of weird. I feel like, in a weird way, Project Luminous feels like it's almost below Bob. Like, if I heard him say that, I'd be like, you know what Project Luminous is?
I'm sure he has it printed out
comic
on a
books.
card. Yeah. Right. Yeah, that's fair. Yeah.
Lacey, what are your thoughts on Project Luminous?
I feel like this thing's been going forever.
Right?
They've been really dragging this out. I mean, John and I were at the panel at New York Comic Con, and they just announced that other brands were getting involved, from Marvel and IDW and a couple other different types of brands. And that's it.
That was 5 months ago.
Yeah, that's all they said. And we were all sitting there like, oh, that's it. And then they were like, oh, coming in January. Well, obviously not coming in January, because all they announced was that it's not coming in January. It's coming in February. So I don't know what the deal is there. It's exciting because, you know, people like Charles Soule and Claudia Gray, they're fan favorites. People love them. They consistently do great work that everybody loves. You know, I'm still waiting for Claudia Gray to do a Ben Solo book. I questioned her about it at Star Wars Celebration. She was like, yeah, I got it. That was the Bob Iger rolling of eyes, John.
Oh, yeah, you caught, didn't you? Oh, yeah, you caught her when we were outside, like, the Starbucks.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I started with a nice to meet you, but...
Well, I think she said, like, I would love to do it even then, right? Didn't she say something
right,
like
but
that?
I'm jokingly saying, like, that's the Bob Iger, like,
yeah. Sure. Yeah.
Other than that, I mean, this time last year, it's crazy to think a year ago already, but all we got at this point was an interview with Bob Iger, I think with the Hollywood Reporter, where he talked about the future of Star Wars after Solo. And he mentioned, like, oh, yeah, we're still doing things with DB, you know, Benioff and Weiss.
Yeah.
And he didn't mention Rian Johnson. And we were talking about, like, what does that mean? He hasn't mentioned Rian Johnson. And now DB, they're out. Ryan's still in.
Yeah.
So again, like, I remember this time last year, people were sitting through that call with Bob Iger being like, wow, I'm really on a finance call. I'm a real idiot right now. And they said nothing because we didn't even have a title for the movie, guys.
Right.
We didn't even have a title for the Star Wars movie coming out that year, which is crazy.
Oh, yeah, you're right. People were saying they were going to get it then. That's right.
Yeah, no way. So it's just funny to look back on how crazy we all are. But I don't think Bob is going to announce anything like that, but I guess we'll have to see. As for Project Luminous, I mean, there's been rumblings that it's like it could be a video game mixed in with the books. What does this mean? Could it be bigger things? People have been pointing to the High Republic stuff because they've mentioned it in other comics, specifically ones that Charles Soule has done. So I guess we'll have to see, right? But it's exciting. It's, you know, any Star Wars content's great content. So we'll have to see what happens. And I hope it's not just books. I really hope it's more than that. Not that I don't love books, guys. It's just like, I don't know. I want a bigger world to explore than just novels.
Yeah, that's a good point.
It's going to be just books.
In comics, right?
Womp womp.
Yes, but I'm considering that.
It's just because the meeting is like, it seems like it's a bigger deal because it's in LA, it's a specific time, they're inviting specific people. It's like, why would this just be books?
We know because everyone's like, I'm invited to this event.
Yeah, right?
And we're like, check email inbox, empty.
Here's my personal view on what I think it could be, which what they've done is they've gotten this writing team together and they're having, and you get some of this information too if you're kind of poking around and paying attention to what they're saying on Twitter, like, hey, I just got back from another Project Luminous meeting. Today was great.
Yeah, they talk about it. Yeah.
They talk about it a little bit. So we kind of have this idea that they're all kind of communicating with each other, kind of how the same way there was communication between the Count Dooku book and the Master Apprentice book, because both of those stories had to involve certain characters around the same time frame, and those stories hadn't been written, but they needed to come out at the same time. There had to be collaboration between those artists. I think what they're doing is, I said artists, but I meant authors.
They're artists, man.
They're artists. They're all artists. We're all artists. I think what they're doing is they're like, hey, we want you to write like kind of this book, and we want you to make this comic and involve these characters. And all of this is going to be happening at the same time. And I'm not trying to make it like a Marvel thing, but just for sake of argument, they're like, hey, we want you to write Captain America, and we want you to write Iron Man. And then we want both of those to happen around the same time, and we want them to kind of collaborate with each other so they'd show up in each other's books and things along those lines. The point of all this, in my personal opinion, is I think what they're trying to do is they're trying to, like just how the sequel trilogy picked up off of something that had already written, that world had already been written. I think Project Luminous is creating this new world in which case they can set a tone for and they can get all the rules and get all the things that are connected, and then later punch in directors and movies that will adapt from all of this content. So they're not planning the movies, but they're writing the characters that fans can kind of pick out their connections and figure out how we all think this is aligning. And then from there, we can be like, these are our main characters. Move forward with these characters, director. That's my opinion on it, which is why I think it's a bigger event, because it's just books and comics, but it's setting the tone. It's like announcing this is what Star Wars is going to be for the next wave.
I think that's right. I agree with you. But I think I personally think the motive of this whole thing, if you're starting from that part as your ground point, is their long-term goal is to create and develop the international audience for Star Wars. I think how you do that, instead of like, they're realizing like, we can't punch people in the face with Star Wars movies. They're not buying it in China. They're not buying it in these other countries and these other big markets where you see Marvel just crushing. Star Wars just does like, it debuted in China like third or even less to like movies that were sequels to C movies in China, like awful movies. Like, it just doesn't register. So if you start with a video games are a huge draw internationally, especially in Asian markets. Comics, and like you start building stories there where people can just start on page one there, figuratively and literally. And I think their biggest marathon goal here, not immediately, they want to try to cultivate this with maybe a new young audience that they can develop, is to finally get an international draw for Star Wars. Now that they've wiped the Skywalkers, so you don't have to like join us here and catch up. It's like, no, we're starting this new thing. If they can pull in international audience, I think their eye is on that, because they realize how valuable of a brand Star Wars is, and it should not be having this hard of a time with the international audience. So I think their number one priority is expanding the brand globally. And that's what I think this is rooted in, if I had to guess, just from a business perspective.
Lacey, anything to bounce off of that? Or is there anything that you're like, I don't think it's that? Did I say anything? No?
No, I think I agree with all those points. It's pretty straightforward.
Do you guys think that video games will be announced as well?
That's that rumor, right? Then someone...
That's what I'm saying. Lacey mentioned it too. People are kicking it around. Yeah. I just don't know if this is the place where they will also pull that in.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, Fallen Order did really well, right? But that's kind of... It depends on what this is. I don't know. I'm not a big gamer, so I don't know how... I could see this coming out, them putting out a game and it fizzling and doing nothing, or it just exploding. I have no finger on the pulse on this, so I don't know about gaming. Lacey knows better about gaming than I do. You too, probably.
I think Fallen Order did really well, but it doesn't have, I would say, the lasting power of like a Battlefront. Like a Battlefront, you can go on and play every day multiplayer, and it's never the same thing because you're playing with new people. Whereas Jedi Fallen Order, it's a campaign mode, story mode game. So it's like, yeah, you can play it every time and learn new things and do side missions and all this other stuff. But like, it's not the same as like, hey, let me grab all my friends and go kill each other on Crate.
Yeah.
So I'm interested to see what that means. Is it another story mode game? If so, I'm sure people will love it because Jedi Fallen Order was really well received. People love that game.
What type of game was Knights of the Old Republic?
Massive multiplayer online role-playing game.
I think that's
with
what it would
a story
be.
mode. Yeah.
Because the logo is the Jedi logo, right? Under Project Luminous?
It is.
And Luminous is like the Jedi were luminous beings. So they're obviously telling us that it's going to have to do with the Jedi.
That's why the High Republic thing is ringing with a lot of people.
I agree. Sure. Yeah.
And like even Charles Soule retweeted it. He was just like, good eye type thing.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
I love that guy because he wants to like spill beans.
I know. Remember how miserable he was at New York Comic Con?
Oh, it was the Ben Affleck face.
I felt so bad for him. He was like, why am I here?
And I tweeted something like that, like Charles Soule looks like he wants to say so much, and he's like, yeah, but I get it. He's like, it's not, I'm not upset or anything, but he seems like if he could, he would just be like, I'm telling you everything. But
Right.
I don't know. What if it's like a Knights of the Old Republic, but not, because those fans are so rabid? Like, what if it's the Jedi in their prime and you're doing crazy force powers and it's huge battles and that sort of thing?
I think if they're going to do the Old Republic era, I don't think they would do it in much different way. I think they would still try to incorporate that thing. But Lacey brought up a good point, or you asking about what kind of a game it is. I don't know, man. I think massive multiplayer online games are like, they gotta really be planned out.
Well, this thing's been in the works for
Like
17
WoW,
years.
League of Legends.
Yeah, I don't feel like you could create an MMO as quickly as you could like Jedi Fallen Order. And not to say that it was like rushed or anything.
No,
I'm just saying
it's story mode.
Yeah, I think you can kind of just like, create your assets and things and just kind of like run them through the motions and stuff. But when you're talking, I mean, even something like Battlefront, you got to figure out how all the characters take damage, from each other and stuff. I don't know, man. It's tricky. An MMO is just like huge. Like, but I don't know. I mean, Lacey, I'm sure you would play it, right?
If there's killing involved, yeah.
Would you be a Sith or a
Directed to the
Jedi?
I'm going to be serious. Like, I find myself getting bored with story mode games because I'm like, okay, but like, I want to kill other people.
See, I'm the exact opposite. I'm like,
give me Battlefront over Jedi Fallen Order any day. And I know a ton of people right now are probably yelling somewhere at me saying that.
What about like a Mortal Kombat, where it's just like you're this person and this person?
I don't like fighter games.
Oh, like
That's
Star
killing, though.
Wars
That's why I thought you
Masters
would
of
like it.
Terrascasi?
Yes, yeah.
I'm surprised they haven't come out with like a Star Wars fighter.
I like
yet.
first-person shooters. Those are my favorite games.
Like GoldenEye.
First-person shooters, yeah.
GoldenEye, but that's like an old school one. But yeah, like Halo, Call of
GoldenEye's
Duty,
the greatest game ever.
Battlefront. I wouldn't say ever. It's a good game. I wouldn't say ever.
I think it's the last game I played.
What is?
GoldenEye.
I would argue that
GoldenEye.
Halo is the best first-person shooter. Not Halo Reach. It's garbage. Like Halo 2 or 3.
2 or 3?
Yeah.
Best first-person shooter for me? Gosh, I don't know. I'd probably have to go with Halo 2.
Wolfenstein.
Like isn't Halo 3.
Wasn't Wolfenstein like the first one?
First-person shooter?
No.
No? What came before that?
I don't.
You know,
I
I
don't
thought
think
the same
so.
thing, Lacey. I was like, no, you're dumb. And then I'm like, I don't know, though.
I
It was
think
like 1993.
Because Doom is a ripoff
94?
of Wolfenstein,
Right.
and Duke Nukem is a ripoff of Doom.
Find me a first-person shooter that came out before Wolfenstein. I dare you.
See, but you keep talking about
First-person
games that
shooter.
like ultimately we're not even comparing to. Like graphics wise, story wise,
That was
capability wise.
that was my prime though. That's when I played games.
In
That's all I know.
93?
From like 94 to 2004 was my prime game
To
era.
2004?
Yeah,
So like high school?
college.
He was in
college.
high school for 10 years, Lacey.
No,
I
what are
meant
you
towards the
talking about?
end. Not the
Yeah.
I know.
beginning.
No, like middle school through like college. It's when you play video games and then you grow up and you stop.
I guess I haven't grown up yet.
I'm just kidding. I'm just too lazy to
Are
buy it. I fear of losing. I don't like losing, and I'd be the guy like Jim Halpert in The Office, skipping in the corner, not knowing what to do, and then someone comes up and blams me, and then that's me. I don't want to do
Blams you?
that. Yeah, like
Are you
Shot-
2 years older than me, John?
yeah, I think so.
Because I was just thinking my year was probably 1996, and I was like, that lines up.
That lines up. There you go, man. There you go.
I wonder how much money The Rise of Skywalker would make in 1996.
I wonder if Lacey wants to move on.
Wants us to move on from this first story.
Well, John put this together, and it's not necessarily anything that's newsworthy, even though this is just his report. But I think he wanted to take a second to kind of talk about it. Rise of Skywalker box office. Did we not talk about this last week a little bit?
Not in technical terms, but we touched on it based on other things.
Oh, the Rotten Tomato score.
Yes.
That's right. Well, this week we actually want to talk about box office, which if we're running the numbers down, domestic, it's currently, as of this recording, domestic 503 million, 546 million worldwide, or foreign, I should say, making a worldwide total of just over $1 billion. Just over. But as far as the domestic ranks, the movie currently is 14th of all time and worldwide 36th biggest box office money-making movie of all time. Is this good? Is this bad? What do we compare it to? Lacey, what are your thoughts on this real quick? Because you were so anxious to talk about this topic.
No, I'm actually not, but I'm going to let John go first. Because all I
right,
have in my
John.
notes are Star Wars equals money.
So, here's my thing. Like, there's so much going on with the narrative over the box office for this movie, and a lot of it in terms of like, oh, it didn't do that well, is fair because, you know, they're stacking it up against, say, The Force Awakens, which is unfair. But in terms of like, should it have done better? Probably. Yes, it probably should have. But then you have people using that as a weapon to talk about the quality of the movie, and I don't think that's fair because there's plenty of good movies out there that don't do well at the box office. Like look at Blade Runner, the original, right? Everybody considers that such a, and even the
Wizard
new Blade
of
Runner.
Oz
I was going to
didn't do
say
well.
second one's better.
Yeah, so I mean, there's a lot of movies over time that have been great that didn't do well at the box office. But I guess my point here is, it still did really well. I mean, it's going to be one of 45 movies to make over $1 billion in the history of films. 45 movies have done it. It's going to finish in the it's about to pass Rogue One. I think next week it'll pass Rogue One at the box office, which everyone said did so great when that came out. So my point now is, why didn't this do as well? Was it the critics' reviews? I don't know about that. I think that there was an unrealistic expectation to have marketed this movie as, this is the final chapter in 9 stories. Nobody bought that. I'm sorry. Nobody is tying this episode 9 to episode 1, 2, or 3. Like, I get why they did it. It made a lot of sense to try to draw every generation in. But this movie was the end of this trilogy, period. It has nothing to do with Darth Vader or Anakin. You can market and say the saga's concluded and all you want. That's fine. This was episode 9, the third one of this trilogy. The second point
I like episode 9, the third one.
of this, yeah. Right. Damn you, Lucas. But then the second point being, when they marketed this movie, it was all on the backs of this new generation. Whereas, episode 8, they were parading Mark Hamill out there to every late night show, every event, every con. I'm back. I had my cameo in the last movie. I'm in this movie now. I'm the Last Jedi. I'm in the trailers. I'm doing the voiceovers. And people are like, oh, wow, Luke Skywalker. We're finally going to go get to see Luke Skywalker come back after 35 years or whatever. And now this one, it was all, I know they had the Palpatine thing, and that's fine, but he's not a draw. This was all on the backs, on the posters, on the trailers, on everything, the marketing, the interviews, all that, all this new generation. And I think that is a credit to them that this movie still did that well. So when you look at it from that perspective, a real fair perspective, I think the movie is a great success. I think it did a great success. I feel like Borat. But I feel like it showed that this new generation can carry the franchise if they could want to continue with it in the future. So comparing it to the last 2 movies, I don't think is fair. I don't think it has anything to do with the quality of the movie. I actually think most audiences outside of critics like this movie better than The Last Jedi, and it might be even with The Force Awakens. Because I haven't met anyone I know aside from like BSR and a couple, maybe 1 or 2 other people who said they didn't like this movie. Most people I talked to thought this movie was great. So I don't think it has to do with that. So and that's it. Maybe there's some fatigue. Maybe there are people who didn't like The Last Jedi who didn't want to go see this. I don't know. But the bottom line is you didn't have the old cast and you didn't have that nostalgia to bring old people back. It was all on the new generation, and I thought it did a great job, and I thought it deserves it deserves all the credit for doing that. So that's my take on it.
Lacey, Star Wars equals money.
That's what I wrote. Star Wars equals money. Because I was like, okay, it's made a lot of money. It's of course it's going to make money. And it's not to dumb down the work and the effort and all the stuff that went into it. But this is not surprising to me. If you had asked me a year ago if it was going to cross $1 billion, I'd be like, yes. I'm pretty sure we asked that of each other. I think it is telling that it didn't do as well overseas. It makes sense. They just don't connect there. I mean, when we had Mark Newbold on from Fantha Tracks, he's from the UK. When he was growing up, he said they would go years and years and years before seeing Star Wars movies in the UK, just because of release and stuff. So they didn't get Star Wars the way that the US got Star Wars, so it's not surprising to me. Other than that, I mean, it's awesome to know that it made this much money because it adds some, I don't know if weight is the right term, but support for Daisy Ridley and the new cast to carry more movies on their own. Like, they don't need to fall back on the older cast. But at the same time, the two movies that have done better, The Last Jedi and The Force Awakens, were marketed with Harrison Ford and Carrie Fisher and Mark Hamill. So it's going to be interesting now that they're all gone, what that means. I think it would still make a ton of money if they were to make a new movie like next year with Daisy Ridley. Like, that doesn't matter. But I think that's why TFA and The Last Jedi made so much money, because there was that connection to the Skywalker saga. And this movie didn't have that. And honestly, all the people that I've spoken to that are not huge Star Wars fans, they just go because they're fun. They didn't like The Last Jedi. They liked this movie, but they still liked TFA the most. Every single person. That's it.
That's it. I kind of disagree with John a little bit on I think TFA is going to take. Well, yeah, I think TFA is definitely going to take the cake for as far as like overall voted which one's your favorite amongst all groups of people. That's
what I'm saying. Like, it's just, it has an excitement, and that movie is just so well done. Like, there's honestly, when I got asked last week what part I would cut from that movie, I picked a shot from a helicopter because nothing else made sense to me to cut it out of the movie because it's just so well paced. Like, it just didn't make sense to me.
I feel like I would be shocked. I would not be okay. I would be shocked to see if Rise of Skywalker, if it was like an overall poll where everybody voted somehow that Rise of Skywalker was the number one favorite. But I would be interested to see where it falls on The Last Jedi. You know what I mean? I think that
depends where you're asking, I think.
That's what I'm saying, though. If you're asking everybody, which is not a real poll.
Val did a poll on Star Wars Newsnet. They got like 20,000 votes, and they were all pretty even. They were all in like the 30s percentage-wise, which was shocking.
Yeah, I don't know. I think that when you look at these types of things, though, I think where a lot of people are falling on the like, it didn't do that good, is kind of like a relative thing. I think there's always the little asterisk, which is it didn't do that well for a Star Wars movie, because nobody really is saying that the movie like failed. I mean, it's just a matter of we put this much money into it and it ended up making this much money. So as a piece of business, I don't think anybody's arguing that it was like a flop. It's kind of one of those things like, I'm saying like, I don't know why this name's popping into my head and he just released a new one, but it's like Eminem came out with a new record. How many did he sell first week? Well, he sold 50,000. 50,000? Like, that's really incredibly low for Eminem. That's still like really good. that's a good amount of CDs per week.
Perspective, yeah.
Godzilla is so good, by the way.
So it's like, I mean, saying that like this movie still made over $1 billion is like, yeah, I mean, like nobody's arguing that. That's a lot. But I definitely had the numbers where I thought it would hit, and it didn't hit those numbers, or it won't, I don't think, by the time this is done. And so then I think, even for me, who is optimistic about the movie, I still say it underperformed. And so you look at that and you go, okay, there's probably people at Disney and there's probably tons and tons of fans that are going, this movie underperformed. Why? You know? And I think Lacey has a point. It wasn't relying on returning characters.
I mean, I said that too. I mean, they hammered Mark Hamill in your face for The Last Jedi because he wasn't in The Force Awakens.
Yeah, I know. But to be fair a little bit, I think Lacey said it in a negative way and you said it in a positive way. Like, I think you were saying, despite the fact that they weren't returning characters, it stood on its own merits and had success.
Yeah, I guess so.
So I'm thinking, like, what's the downside of it? Like, maybe it's because we didn't have returning characters. I don't know. I mean, some might argue that the story just wasn't good or wasn't compelling.
I honestly think part of it, people are gonna go crazy right now. I think part of it is because we went into this movie with Luke Skywalker dead. I think as a general fan, you're like, okay, then what's the story then if Luke Skywalker's dead? Like, my dad would ask that question. Like, what else is there to say? So I think him being dead, even if you liked the story, even if you agreed with it in The Last Jedi, I think general fans are going, okay, but Star Wars is about Luke Skywalker and now he's dead, so what else? So I think that there was this disconnect of like, okay, but what does that mean then?
I do remember at the end of Last Jedi, there was some conversations that said parts of The Last Jedi felt like that was episode 9.
Right. That was it. He's dead. Yeah.
So I don't know if it's like a retrospect. Yeah. I think maybe like a retrospect would be like Force Awakens, Han Solo's movie, Last Jedi was Carrie Fisher's movie, and maybe it all led up to Luke Skywalker being the final story or whatever.
Which to me would make sense if you think about it just like that, not even knowing what the storylines are. If you were just to look at them as 3 movies or 3 different characters, why would you have Luke go second? Makes no sense.
Well, that's what JJ did.
Right. That's what I'm saying. Like it
almost forces Ryan's hand because how do you not pick up from that, you know?
Right.
I mean, I guess you could have.
And they say that was George Lucas's plan for Luke too, to have him on this island, and he ran away from everything. Like, that was a big part of what they were saying his treatment was. They weren't that far off from where they put Luke. In other words,
right? But did he kill Luke in the second of the trilogy?
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, that's the thing.
Yeah, and
I don't think George did.
And this isn't to say you know the
he was saved by the midichlorians.
Retrospect is 2020 thing, like, but I'm saying you could have still had that story for Luke and stuck that in episode 9.
Yeah,
you know,
James, so that poll that Val put out for the sequel trilogy, it was close. So it was 36% Last Jedi, 35% Rise of Skywalker, 29% Force Awakens. 26.
So Force Awakens was the least.
26,000 votes.
I'm calling shenanigans again. TFA is the best movie in the trilogy. No doubt.
I mean,
I'm with Lacey on this one. I don't see it.
Last Jedi people are saying Last Jedi because they're so angry at the Rise of Skywalker. Rise of Skywalker people are saying it because recency. TFA is hands down the best one in the series.
Well,
and
now you're doing that thing now where you're saying your opinion is the fact.
I'm not saying that's a fact. I'm saying that's what people have said to me that aren't Star Wars fans, that aren't on Twitter. Every single one. Like, I'm polling like 15 coworkers. They come up to me. I asked them how the movie was. They said, it was good. I liked it. I said, now looking back at the trilogy, which one's your favorite? Oh, the first one with Harrison Ford. Every single one of them said that. Every single person.
I think if I talk to people a lot, like the people I've talked to are like, man, this last one was my favorite or whatever, right? That's my experience. But if I talk to people like on the grand scale, I feel like it would be 40, 40, 20. And it would be like Force Awakens, Rise of Skywalker, Last Jedi. Real life people outside of the bubble. Like people I talked to, I had a hard time with people saying like, man, that movie stunk about The Last Jedi. I'm like, no, it didn't, you know? But so I feel like Matt, that's how the casual audience, didn't register with The Last Jedi, where diehards, I feel like, really loved it.
Matt liked The Last Jedi, or liked The Rise of Skywalker, said it was fun to watch. He remembered things from it, which is a big deal. He remembered certain moments. Last Jedi, he remembers nothing but Mary Poppins Carrie Fisher. That's all he remembers. And he likes TFA the best.
I remember when Last Jedi came out, people were saying like, you know, I didn't like that movie or whatever. I heard it was bad or whatever. And I was like, I think that what you're hearing is like the social media group, but most people who just went and watched the movie really liked it.
They really
and now a year or 2 years later, I'm starting to think maybe that wasn't true. Maybe the general audience really legitimately just didn't like that movie. And Rise of Skywalker is definitely like a bump up where there's still like some back and forth, but it makes me wonder what we're going to have, what conversation similar to this is going to be had in 2 years from now when we're looking back at this whole thing going, yeah, it felt like we were in a way like kind of defending Rise of Skywalker too. But the overall view of it is just people were okay with The Force Awakens, but they didn't like the last two. I mean, this is turning into kind of a negative thing, but
you know what though?
Yeah, I don't know.
I love all three movies so much. So I feel like the kid who has to choose which parent when they're getting divorced or something. I love both. Like, and it's people. I hate when people I like in the Star Wars fandom are like, I'm on this team. I'm on this team. Like it's the Twilight thing. I'm like, it's not the case, guys. So I think in 10 years, people are gonna look back on this trilogy very favorably. Like, look at what's happened to the prequels. Like, it's got a rose-colored glass looking back at it. Now, when people hated those movies 15 years ago. I think in 10 years, especially the kids who like this was their trilogy, this is going to be a really popular trilogy. Maybe the casual fan's going to like skip over TLJ sometimes if they rewatch and it's on TNT. But I think overall, this trilogy is going to be it's going to age really well, in my opinion. Maybe that's
John,
optimistic, but I
like your divorce analogy, but I'm going to up it a little bit. The Force Awakens is when your parents are together. And then The Last Jedi is your dad, and Rise of Skywalker is your mom.
Yeah, there you go. I like that. That's a good one.
Which one's the dad?
Last Jedi.
Oh, I thought you said Rise of Skywalker was the dad.
And to be fair, we can interchange that however that fits your narrative. Let's not say.
Maybe.
Yeah.
So
I was going to say the last one was sweet. Like it was like easier on the outside.
Yeah, I guess.
And Last Jedi is more complex on the inside. Never mind.
Either way, just leave it general, and the analogy works.
Yeah, whatever.
Right? But either way, it's gonna be 14th all time, maybe even higher domestic, and 35th all time worldwide. I mean, whatever. We can pinch pennies and say it was a failure. It's gonna be the third lowest after inflation adjustment, the third lowest grossing Star Wars movie. But still, it's a Star Wars movie and it grossed over $1 billion. So,
we've talked pretty heavily about this, but there is one more thing we should lightly mention. There was an official book announcement last week, and it came from Polygon, kind of all places. You wouldn't have expected that. But they wanted to announce a new YA novel that's centered around Poe Dameron and his days as a spice runner. And don't even worry about it. Zorii Bliss is going to be in this book. So there we go. Lacey, you've somehow managed to make John go first on the last two stories. Do you have anything to say about the Poe Dameron announcement? What do you think?
Yeah, I do. First of all, I don't know why they're doing a Poe book again. How many books does Poe need? He gets all the books.
He doesn't have a book, does he?
Comic?
Resistance Reborn is basically his book.
Oh, that's fair. That's fair. I'll take that.
Anyway, I'll still read it. It's whatever. Okay, so the book's called Freefall. Comes out August 4th, 2020. So this year. You can pre-order it probably by now. from according to the announcement. It said at the end of the month, so probably around now. Written by Alex Segura. It's about him being a spice runner back in his teenage days. And the art is by Alice Chang, which I have a couple of her pieces, which are really cool. She did like a Kylo Ren piece and a Leia piece that are hanging in my house. She's very, very talented.
Is that image the cover? Is that the cover? His face?
That is the cover.
Oh, okay.
Oh, it
That's
is?
cool.
Yeah. Yep.
I thought it was going to be like a cover not final thing.
No, that's the cover. So I love Poe. We talked about Poe a couple weeks ago about how much we like him in The Rise of Skywalker, especially his character has just grown so much throughout the trilogy. But this series goes back to when he was a teenager, and I'm reading the description that they provided, and they're like, okay, he's a hotshot pilot. And I'm like, again, with the hotshot, we're going back to this again. And then they're like, oh, and he had a mom who died, and then he doesn't get along with his dad, so he runs away to go on adventures. And I'm like, all right, typical Star Wars, going on adventures, coming of age story. Okay, keep going. And then they're like, and then he is a really good pilot, and he's going on adventures in a crime syndicate. And I was like, okay, so Han Solo. And they're like, and then he finds a girl. And I'm like, so Han Solo. And then they're like, kind of like Han Solo, cross out. Not Han Solo, Poe. So the story sounded a lot like Han Solo to me. Mm-hmm. Very Han Solo-esque. So I'm interested to see where the story goes, because the author described it as a pivotal story, and this story adds weight to Poe's character. And my response was like, okay, how much weight does it actually provide? Because the story that you described to me isn't necessarily a coming of age, because you described who Poe is right now.
So let's see if this works. It's been a few years since Han's mother, who was a pilot in the rebellion, that doesn't work, passed away. And Han and his father have more and more trouble connecting. Not
Cut to
sure
Lando. Did you ever get along with your dad? No. Yeah. Me neither.
Not sure what he wants to do with his life. Teenage Han runs away from home to find adventure and to figure out what kind of man he wants to be.
Han.
Sounds good.
Could be Han. Other than the rebellion thing, but that's they're only doing that because remember the comic where she was like in the rebellion? Yeah.
So, he figures out the man he wants to be. One of the things I loved from Lawrence Kasdan talking about writing TFA is that when he wrote the older characters like Han and Leia and Luke, he wrote that no matter what, you never stop learning and growing, and there's nothing that you're going to learn early in life that's going to prevent you from making mistakes later in life. And like, you're always constantly becoming who you're meant to be. So this idea of Poe being like, oh yeah, he's just going to figure it out. And then he becomes Poe and then he's a hero. I'm like, what? So am I going to read it? Yes, probably. Is Zorii going to be in it? Yes, that's cool. Babu Frick better be in it. That's the most exciting thing to me. Get more Babu Frick. I'm interested to see how...
Hey, Babu.
I honestly would have liked this book more if it was from Zori's perspective and not from Poe's. If we got more of Zorii and what her story was and how she met Poe, that's more interesting to me than, hey, let's go back and give the focus to this pilot that we've seen now 3 movies, 1 book, a comic series, all these things from. Like, who's Zorii? We didn't even see her full face.
Yeah, and we're going to get that, but again, I like that, Lacey. I
think
do
that
think
adds more weight to The Rise of Skywalker than hearing about Poe figuring out the man he's meant to be.
That does to me kind of similarly like with Phasma, where like I was like, okay, Phasma was whatever. Then I read the book, and then when I watched Last Jedi, or when I go back and watch Force Awakens again, I'm like, oh man, this character holds a lot of weight. And I'm glad that she made the cut and made it into the film. Right. You know what I mean? Like, had this Zorii book come out first, then we would have got to see her in the movie and would have been like, oh, that's sweet. I know like what the situation was.
I laughed reading this.
That's a good point. This should have been a rise or journey to the Rise of Skywalker book.
Right. I laughed reading this, James, and I thought of you from our Poe conversation when you were like, they don't know how to deal with Poe. This description to me reads, So you're doing the same story again. He's a hotshot pilot that hasn't figured it out.
That's the first part of the book. They show how great he is. The second part is he makes some mistakes and it gets him into trouble. But the third part is he realizes their mistakes, he sorts out his issues, and he comes back on top.
Yeah.
John, what do you think?
I don't know if I'm being too optimistic lately, so I'm gonna pick an upcoming episode where I just burn everything to the ground, but it's not gonna be today. But I think I like this idea for Poe because I feel like, to bounce off what you guys are saying from a different angle, everything about Poe has been about his piloting, and he's the great pilot, but he screws up piloting. And sometimes when he's screwing up piloting, he figures it out and does great things piloting. And then sometimes he learns how to pilot better and blow things up.
Say pilot one more time.
Pilot. This is him like getting his hands dirty, and I feel like it adds kind of a different layer to his character a bit. So when I heard this initially, the first time I saw The Rise of Skywalker, I'm like, oh, that side of Poe. And then you even saw like Finn, like, how'd you learn how to do that when he's hot wiring the car? Or like, you were a spice runner, and then like busting his chops about that. He's not like the poster boy on the military wall anymore. Like, come join the resistance. It's like, no, this guy had his rebellious years too. He wasn't always about a Boy Scout.
I feel like that came too late in the story of Poe, though.
Yeah, that's true.
Sorry. Not going to get into that.
No, I mean, that's
I was
fine.
also going to say, I thought it was weird that Finn called him out on such a like common task among people who were in a rebellion.
Yeah, wiring
You know
stuff.
what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, he's been part of the resistance for like 7 years now, at least. You don't think he knows how to hotwire a speeder to get out of a sticky situation?
No, sure.
You don't think he knows how to hotwire a speeder?
Come on, man. Like, if he didn't know how to do that, he'd be like, oh, no problem. I'll teach you later, Finn. And Finn would probably be like, sweet, that might save my life
What
one
a
day.
joke.
Like,
it's like Resistance 101.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure he's hotwired things before. I don't know. I just think it's a cool thing to add to his story. I don't know. It's not that big of a deal to me. It's not like, oh my God, they ruined Poe Dameron, you know?
I don't think it's going to ruin Poe Dameron either. I'm just saying I feel like this is another Poe Dameron story.
Yeah, but it's different. It's him not doing his Boy Scout, I'm a resistance fighter thing. It's him stepping away from that life and making a choice of his own and doing bad things in a way.
You think
Johnny,
of him as
you
a
gonna
Boy
join us
Scout?
on book discussions?
Yeah,
I don't think...
hot shot pilot. He's Maverick from Top Gun. This is who he is. Like,
yeah, but he's willing to do whatever like going against leadership is like the whole thing he does.
But he's
in
still
The Last Jedi.
He's been in the Navy the whole time though. Like this is him like getting away from that and going AWOL, and I think that adds a different angle to him. And you know, maybe the book doesn't. Maybe the book's a total flop. Maybe it's a YA on the surface garbage, and it may very well be. But it could also
to be
add,
fair, some of the
add
YA
something
novels have been some of the best. So.
That's what I'm saying though. So it could add something that we're like, oh, that's cool. Like that's interesting to see Poe do that, or maybe Poe kills somebody and he regrets it or something. Like who knows what we're gonna get out of this book. This is all very prologue, and it's like the setup, like you guys said, it sounds like Han Solo. I hope it's not that. I hope it takes us somewhere that deviates from a Han Solo type of life of crime thing. I'm just keeping optimistic that we may get finally a different angle from Boy Scout, Navy boy Poe Dameron, because while I love Poe and I thought he was hilarious in The Rise of Skywalker and he's been funny throughout the whole trilogy and he's been a great hero and all that stuff, I maybe like to see the guy get his hands dirty once in a while and see if that adds anything to the character. That's all.
All right.
This
Anything
is called
else,
Free
Lacey?
Fall, by the way. I don't know if I mentioned
Free.
Yeah, you said that.
Free
fall
fall with Poe.
I was going to say Tom Petty wrote the foreword, but I forgot he's dead.
that. Oof.
Oof. Moment of silence.
Don't come around here no more.
All right.
All right. Last
Lacey, you
Anthem
want to
Mary
take
Jane.
us into the Scoundrels rundown? We got a lot of stuff going on with Star Wars Newsnet and the Resistance broadcast.
Some might say I'm a hotshot pilot. Ready?
Punch! Oh.
1, 2, 3. Punch it!
Punch it!
All right. right, Scoundrels Rundown. So as we talked about last week, coming up, which is kind of like a yearly thing, but we're getting into the con season as we get into the spring and summer of the year. And the first one I can tell you that I'm going to is Ace Comic-Con in Boston on March 21st. I believe it's a Saturday.
March 25th.
March 21st.
First full day of spring.
So I'll be there
Bastin.
representing Star Wars Newsnet and TRB. Gonna talk to dealers and fan groups. Ewan McGregor and Hayden Christensen, or I should have said Ewan and Hayden, or Ewan and Anakin like I did last time. They'll be there. Matthew Wood's going to be there, so there should be a little bit of a Star Wars presence, which is exciting. So I'll be there, and I'll give you more updates as we get closer. But if you're in the Northeast Bastin area, you can come hang out with me. It'll be fun.
Khakis.
Drive my cab to Bastin. All right, so
I lost my khakis.
are you a patron of TRB? Well, if you are, we're going to be adding more exclusive stuff to the page, including more behind-the-scenes stuff.
Oh, boy.
Which everybody seems to like, which is, in between episodes, we're chatting. We're going to record those and put those up so you can see what it's like to run the show, get ready for the show, what we're talking about off the air. So when we reference stuff in the episode and we say, hey, off air, we talked about this, you'll get to see it. Because we can't
You seen
always...
the two ladies and the cat meme? Yeah.
How do you always know these memes? I never see these things.
That's a popular one. It's the housewives yelling at the cat that's eating the salad.
Oh, yes. What is that from, by the way? I'm not to interrupt the rundown, but...
It's Housewives.
Oh, like the Jersey housewife?
Beverly Hills Housewives.
Oh, all right. Sorry.
They're yelling at someone else, but someone put that cat there. That's what makes it funny, because the cat's like...
Now I get it.
Like Baby Yoda.
Exactly.
I saw that.
So you'll get to see what we talk about and do before and after we record the podcast episodes. And if you've been considering expanding your TRB experience and supporting the show in that way, head to patreon.com/resistance broadcast and check out our 5 tiers and sign up for one that is right for you. And we appreciate all your support because it helps us do cool stuff like go to Ace Comic-Con and go to other events and cover stuff at Celebration. We have a ton of Celebration plans in store for you guys, and we can't wait to share them as we get closer. But that's all we got this time. So, Chewie, get us out of here.
Oh, he's sleeping over there. James put the graphic in.
Is he closer than he was before?
He Whoa! No, I'm just kidding. All right, guys. It is time for Ask the Resistance.
I've been wondering, what are midichlorians?
Shameless request for a shout out. So I'm just going to do it. Rick Villanueva, you asked for a shout out on the podcast.
Hey, Rick
So there you go, buddy.
Villanueva.
You met all three of us at Celebration. Me and James outside of the arena, and then Lacey inside the con event itself on the show floor, I think, at a different point in time. But we gave you some shades. And I know you didn't get pictures with all of us and that sort of thing, but there will be another time. But there's your shout out, buddy. So thanks for always listening and watching and being a fun Star Wars fan, man. All right. This one goes to Lacey. Lacey, you ready?
Yep.
Okay. This is from Ion Cannon. And they asked, which of the Disney era films would you most like to see get the deep dive treatment on action figures like the 1999 Phantom Menace, where every single character in every frame possible got an action figure? So which of the sequel trilogy would you like to see pummel us with all sorts of action figures?
Well, Disney era.
Right. Sequel. Yeah, Disney era, I guess is fair. Yeah.
Solo a Star Wars story. Because we get a ton of creatures and droids and characters in the lodge scene when they're playing the game of Sabacc, like Therm Scissor Punch. I really want a Therm Scissor Punch action figure. And there's a ton of other characters.
Nail biter one.
Yeah, that one. Yeah, there's so many. The little furry guy with the white fur.
Mm-hmm.
What about Clint Howard? Clint Howard's character would be fun, though.
I guess. That's what you want the mean droid guy?
Just like a weird droid
You never
guy.
had it so good. Like,
Yeah.
It's Clint Howard. Come on.
I guess so. So that's John's answer for this question. But yeah, so then also Dryden Voss's ship was a good, like, scene with tons of people in it and different creatures and aliens that they could really dive into. And specifically, I love the one called Lulio Primac, which is the little green guy in the little container of formaldehyde, supposedly. That's what Wikipedia said it was. And he's actually named by Pablo Hidalgo after Luis Leo Prima, the singer who sang Pennies in Heaven, because they used his voice in production to mock the scene. So that's why his name is Lulio
This
Primac.
is in Dryden Voss's lair?
Yeah, the singer that sings with the woman. I want that character.
I'm going to throw it out there. Go listen to the soundtrack. The higher pitched version of his voice is infinitely better musically. I do not like
chicken in the pot.
Yeah, I do not like the low voice in the movie. I don't know why they changed it.
So I read a lot on his character, and then the girl he sings with, she has like a whole backstory where she's like a recording artist that's like highly popular in the galaxy, and like Dryden paid her a salary to be on the ship to just sing for his parties.
Was she a hotshot spice runner by any chance?
No.
Oh.
Not anymore.
Anyway,
All
that's
right.
my answer.
That's a good answer.
Make Solo 2 happen.
Yeah.
With action figures too.
Right on. All right. James, Matt Skywalker. Man, this family just doesn't go away. At MIB 1188, Men in Black 1188. Do you think Force healing is a power solely reserved for light side Force users, or could it be used for dark siders? It seems to me the need to have a positive sacrificial element to it, which would be contrary to the selfish philosophy of the Sith. So what do you think, James?
Well, I like that my answer is kind of in the question. So I'm going to try to do this. Do I think Force healing is a power solely reserved for light side users? I mean, it could be used by the darksiders, but it seems to me to need to have a positive sacrificial element to it, Matt. So, which would be contrary to the selfish philosophy of the Sith. That's my answer, I think.
Perfect.
Great.
Yeah, is that it? You're done?
Yes, actually, no, I straight up was like, I think it's a light side thing. And then he like reads it and I'm like, yeah, that's just bang on. That's exactly what I think is the case. So
Matt, you should have just sent a sentence instead of the question.
Yeah.
All right.
Good job, Matt.
Thank you, Matt. Next one is by Samir at Samir_T. And he said, Dio had a robot voice when introduced at Celebration last April. Then in The Rise of Skywalker, JJ did the voice. Why the change? I would love to hear John's guess in the voice of JJ Abrams. Always cracks me up.
I wonder if this was started because I posted that video.
Could be.
I posted the video of Dio at Celebration from the panel where he comes out and he doesn't have, he just has the wee ooh, woo, woo voice.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe. Samir, let us know. Was Lacey responsible for you asking this question?
Just the inspiration, not asking the question. I didn't make you do anything.
Samir, asking questions is a big deal. I just can't wait for you to hear my answer. Okay, bye. All right, so that's my JJ voice for you. Definitely not answering the question in JJ's voice. So we kind of know why this happened, actually. So after the premiere, Lacey and I went to a bar, and we actually ran into Leland Shee and Matt Martin from the story group, and they had told us that it was a change made by JJ kind of late in the process because Chris Terrio had kind of developed the character based on a friend's dog who was a rescue that was an abused dog, something like that, and it was very timid, and it would come up to you and then back away and that sort of thing. So they felt like giving it that voice to give it that personality was better than the beep, boop, boop, beep, boop thing. And I have to agree. I thought Dio was adorable. I love the no thank you, hello. I miss her. Like, I thought
Sad.
he was. Yeah, I thought he was. I have a squeaky wheel. Like, I thought he was adorable and maybe overshadowed a bit by Babu Frick, but I thought he was a great entry, and I liked the change that they made. So that's why they did it, though, because of where the character was created from, and they wanted to add more to its give it a personality more than just kind of a beeping, booping sort of rolling wheel. So that's that. All right, last one for all of us quickly. Mike Brumore at Drum Jedi said, what would each of you order if you visited Dex's Diner? So I will start with James. What would you order?
I'm the absolute worst when it comes to like foreign food and stuff. I am all like, I don't want Chinese. I want mall Chinese. Like, it's totally different.
Well, you like mall Chinese better than like a 5-star like Chinese restaurant?
Do you go to 5-star Chinese restaurants?
If I'm going to eat Chinese, though, I'm not going to go to like mall Chinese wouldn't be my top one. So I was a little confused, but it's a culture thing, I guess.
Oh yeah. I would get like the safest thing on the menu by far. I mean, probably some type of salad, because anything with any sort of like animal or something, I don't know. I'd be like, no dressing. Like, I don't know what you milked to get this ranch. So, no, thank you.
No, thank you.
Like
no, thank
Dio.
You. Yeah. All right, Lacey, what would you order at Dex's Diner?
Probably a cheeseburger.
Like a Ronto burger?
Cheeseburger club. Or I usually get breakfast when I go to the diner. That's just like no matter what time of day, I always get breakfast.
That's true.
But I don't know what breakfast would look like in Star Wars terms, so that's why I'm falling back on the cheeseburger and fries. Or chicken fingers and fries. It's just plain.
I find that when you go to a restaurant and you're like in the process of ordering and then you find out they're serving breakfast, you're like, everything changed. It's a completely different world now. Give me that menu.
Well, that's why I go to the diner, because you can get breakfast at any time.
Yeah.
That is a good benefit. I agree. I would order a cup of Java juice, and then like Obi-Wan, I just wouldn't drink it. That's it.
Just sit down.
And then I would go somewhere else, because you know why? And I actually thought about this. Dex is disgusting, and he's like the lead chef. He doesn't wear gloves or a hairnet. He's got all that hair all over him. And he picks up his pants at one point, which is right near a really dirty area in your body. And he just goes about his business. So I don't want anything cooked by this guy. I would get a cup of juice from the waiter, leave it there, just like they do in every movie when someone meets someone for a drink. They order a drink and they never drink it, and then the scene ends. And then I would go to a different establishment.
Is this a new thing that you're talking yourself out of all the questions now?
What?
Like you're not answering them?
I just answered it. I would order a cup of Java juice and not imbibe it. And that would be it. Because I've gotten food poisoning before, and now it's like a thing with me where I'm like afraid to get it again. And I would definitely get food poisoning from Dex's Diner. That's all I'm saying.
You think so?
Their Yelp score is probably horrible. Whatever Yelp is in Star Wars, probably like a 1-star. Dex's Diner. Anyway. Yeah, that's it. All right. Guys, I want to thank you so much for those questions. If you want to get your question featured on the show, send it over to us on Twitter at RBATSWNN. Or if you're shy, like Jose Altuve of the Astros, you can email us at resistancebroadcast@gmail.com with your questions there as well. And anyway, even in the comments somewhere, we find them. And if you're a patron, of course, you know how to send them to us there in hyperspace, right to the front of the line. But that's the end of this episode. So I want to thank everyone for listening and watching, being a part of the Resistance. If you are new to us, thank you so much for joining us. Make sure you do subscribe, because we do have 2 episodes every week. So Apple Podcasts, SoundCloud, Spotify, and YouTube. If you need your Resistance Broadcast swag, head to tpublic.com/user/Resistance Broadcast. You can get all like our logo tee that I'm wearing here. Lacey's wearing one of our logo tees. That shirt James is wearing, you can actually get that exclusively on our page there as well. But also, of course, our Make Solo 2 Happen shirts are our top seller. So if you want to join that movement and grab one of those, do that. Make sure you're going to StarWarsNewsNet.com every day for your latest Star Wars news, reviews, editorials, information, and more, especially this month with all that new Star Wars news that's going to be coming down with Project Luminous later and that sort of thing. We're going to be covering all of that for you guys. I want to thank our patrons, as we mentioned earlier in the show. Patreon.com/Resistance Broadcast. We are very, very close. We're teetering very close to our next goal, which would be an Empire Strikes Back commentary. We have 5 tiers. If you want to get more content from us aside from the 2 episodes. We have a lot of exclusive stuff there, 8 or 9 mini episodes every month. We're just, like we mentioned earlier via Lacey's rundown, we're going to be adding new behind the scenes stuff. So we're always changing and upgrading things over there. 5 tiers. Go check it out. If you see one you like, sign up. We appreciate the additional support. And I want to say a special thanks to our generals over there, Carmelo, Andrew Staley, Neil Lowry, Jeremy Myers, Neil Shaw, David Probus, John Reese, JG Carr, Seth Kime, Micah Harrison, Tampa Movie Guy, a.k.a. Gary, Michael Gaines, and Val Trichkoff. Generals, thank you so much for all of your support. You guys can find me on Twitter at Johnny Hoey and over at Star Wars News Net. James?
Twitter and Instagram at Myra Trunks.
Lacey?
Twitter and Instagram at Lacey Gilleran.
That's it, guys. So the big one's coming. So enjoy your
Luminous.
weeks. Thursday, we're going to be discussing Kylo Ren, Ben Solo. So get ready, guys. It's going to be a fun one. We're going to do some other stuff too, as always, different topics, and of course, resistance transmissions, which always is a good time. So we hope you enjoyed this one, and we'll see you guys on Thursday morning with another episode right here on the Resistance broadcast. We'll see you around, kids.